Okay, welcome. We are going to get going. Welcome to 4 of 6 of our ESF webinar series. If you have been with us, then you're aware of what ESF is. If you have not, be sure that in the SMORE newsletter or in the email that when you have a chance that you watch the ESF video, because it will explain to you what ESF is all about. Today we are focusing in on positive school culture, and I do want to reference at the bottom of this slide it references that we are using an updated 6-pager and also the exemplar packet. You do not need those for the webinar, but just wanted to make note of that in case you have been joining us for previous webinars, that we do have an updated 6-pager. There is very little difference between them. The levers are the same. The content essentially is the same. There's a few details listed in the content that vary just slightly. So not a deal breaker if you're using that one and continue to, but just wanted to reference it. And the updated link is on the SMORE newsletter and in the email as well, if you want to print that out when we're done. Okay, so today we are honing in the middle. It's really right. So the core, we started at the end, effective instruction, and working our way backwards. So we're in 4 of 6, which is landing us right in the middle of the levers, which is positive school culture. So as we look into positive school culture, and it's the middle of the core of what we call it strengthens the core, and we'll be referencing page 3 of the 6-pager. And so when I look at this and lay on the key practices, and so this is the ESF, which is the framework, and I go through the key practices for positive school culture. It really kind of unpacks it. So the goal of positive school culture, based on research, is that stakeholders are engaged in creating and continually refining campus mission, vision, and values. That also campus practices policies and policies demonstrate high expectations and shared ownership for student success with a focus towards college and career readiness and post-secondary readiness. Staff members share a common understanding of what the mission, vision, and values are and can explain how they're present in the everyday life of the school. And that also there's regular campus climate surveys that are used to assess and measure progress on student and staff experiences. So one of my favorite things, though, is then what does this really look like in school? So then we layer on the success criteria. So then do we have evidence of what the goal of this lever is? So for example, is there evidence that we do have, we have created and refined a mission, vision, and values with collaborative involvement from administrators, teachers, parents, and students. So it just gets into a little more specificity on what that could look like. Then if I go on to the next next component of that is practices and policies are captured in writing and consistently implemented. Administrators and teachers demonstrate high expectations for students, and asset-based language and staff-to-staff and staff-to-student interactions is evident. And then are there artifacts in the classrooms and hallways that reference what these practices and policies are? And can the staff articulate what it is without prompting, and share how classroom and school routines, procedures, and policies reflect them? Are there artifacts in classrooms and hallways that reference the mission, vision, and values? And then if I look at climate surveys, are they administered at least annually? And do they include student, staff, and families' response around key climate indicators? So really, when we look at the ESF, it gets really specific based around research of what is evidence or what would be evident in a campus that demonstrates positive school culture, and then what could that look like? So one of the really neat things about ESF is the exemplar packet. So when we dig in, and we're only honing in on 3.1 today, which is positive school culture. And so if I look in the exemplar packet, there's multiple examples from this campus in Dallas ISD. So here's some, if you do not have any of these systems, or you have or you're looking for ideas, that's one of my favorite things about the framework, is they really kind of give us a picture. I'm a visual learner, and so it gives us a picture of what this could look like. But with that said, there's not a one-size-fits-all. So this is just some ideas. So this is from one campus. I can't speak specifically to how they utilize each of these components because I have not actually observed this campus, but I can take in here and gather in here that obviously their mascot is tigers, and they have a student of the Tiger of the Month selection form. I'm not sure who selects that, so if I were to go on those campus, those are some things. But with that said, this is the evidence of their positive school culture and the systems that they've implemented that are around their vision, mission, and values. So here, this is one of my favorite things as a campus principal, really was to see how scripted the morning announcements were, and then how they included what their values are within the morning announcements. And so very scripted, and it has different places for different speakers. So definitely something that in the absence of a principal that somebody could pick up and lead, in which is a system that the system would carry on, and the mission, vision, and values would be very apparent and consistent as well. So then you can see on this bottom left that it looks like they collect house points. I have no idea what they do with those, but I'm sure this is for positive behavior, effort. That would be my thoughts. And then there must be a reward or bragging rights of some sort with whoever wins those. This in the exemplar is probably personally one of my favorite things that I got to look at. Was this talks about this ACE campus, and it's a culture overview. And so it's a very detailed list of what are the expectations. So here, what is positive culture in ACE schools? So this is what we're saying that it looks like. It's a strong school-wide system. It's clean, welcoming, routines. So these are the expectations, but then what's really neat is if you keep going, then this is really where I feel like it's very specific, is what does that look like? So what are we expecting? Dress code and arrival and hall transitions, common spaces, checkout dismissal. So very detailed and systematic. So as there's turnover, if there's new employees or substitutes, or teaching students what the expectations are, it's very specific and easy to understand, in my opinion. So you can see here what's exemplary, what are we really looking at? They've defined what the exemplar is, and then what would be good, what's proficient, and then what would need support. So what's in the progress component, or progressing. So here they have identified what their vision and mission is. On this Be a Champion, this to me looks like kind of a staff claim or statement about what staff commit to do that aligns with their vision and mission. And then students also have a student motto. I'm not sure how this is used. I've seen this used in various ways on campuses. Can be recited in like after morning announcements, or at the end of morning announcements, in classrooms, in a study period. It just depends on your layout and design, but this could be used in different ways. But definitely a student motto that aligns with their vision and mission. So if I look at put on the lens of ESF and really looking at, for this campus, what is there evidence of? So there's strong evidence of those middle two rows. And then the top and bottom, to me, there is some evidence, but really I'd have to get in and see in the campus is what does that look like? So definitely they have a mission and vision, but I'm unsure who was involved in the creation and refinement of that. Were administrators, teachers, parents, and students, or not? And then if I look at that bottom component, are there climate surveys? So far, I didn't see evidence of that in the exemplar. That doesn't mean they don't have it, but that's just kind of the lens we put on when looking at that. So to transition that, this is the ESF framework provided in ESF, and these are the exemplars provided to all principals for access, but I wanted to really share and go into a personal example. So this was my campus, and really layering on the ESF and specifically looking at 3.1 positive school culture. Really wanted to kind of show you an example of how you could utilize this and process through it with your campus. So I can speak to this campus because I lived it, kind of in looking at 3.1 is what did we do focusing on positive school culture. So really right now I'm kind of putting on my analytical frame of mind and wondering, thinking about the ESF framework, processing through what our procedures were in doing this. And then I'm going to come to the end and say, well, what could be our next steps? Are we aligning with what the framework indicates is effective, or do we need to do something different? So in our year one, really it was my year one day at campus. You can see the list through here, but this was the campus hallway. When I arrived on campus, this is what the hallways look like. There's college flags hanging at every campus, at every classroom, and two principals prior to me, I don't know if you've ever heard of NEU, but took a group of teachers to NEU to a conference, and they loved, it's really focusing on college readiness, and this was an elementary campus, but within that, embedding systems in your campus that start educating students on college and really just setting their sights on it. And so when I got there, I invited all staff to come have a one-on-one with me and really asked them some questions, mainly about what this campus does well, what could it do better. And then I asked them to tell me that campus had a motto of whatever it takes, and I asked them to tell me, what does whatever it takes mean? Well, really what I discovered is there had been some staff change in between that principal and myself, but yet the staff loved the college focus and loved the motto, but we needed to do some alignment in what that is and what does it mean to us now as a staff. So we did a book study on NEU. There was a lot of new staff, and even some of the older staff hadn't done that if they weren't one of the ones selected for the conference. So campus-wide, we did a book study. It took us over the course of about a semester. They talked about that in PLCs, and then at the end of that book study, really decided as a staff, is this something we want to move forward with? And that absolutely 100% said, yes, we do. This is who we are, what we want to do, and focusing on a school committed to do whatever it takes as the adults in charge to help students be prepared to go to college if they choose. And so we actually had to write into NEU, and when you do that, you have to get accepted and you have to show evidence of that aligns with what their vision and mission is for that. And so we did that. So this really became our vision and mission and focus, and our motto as a campus is that we were preparing students for life beyond just elementary, and with the intent of preparing them to be what they wanted to be, and if they choose that. So this was the logo that we got from that. Then here was a motto after we completed that component, shared that with the staff, and then we all as a staff signed this, and this hung by our mailboxes in our staff room, our staff mail room. So then we start looking at, if I start layering on what were practices, evidence that would speak to 3.1, one of the things that we did were the first 20 days. This was something that had been developed prior to my arrival, but during this process and really refocusing on our vision and mission, we took it, and a small group of teachers that were a cross-section of the campus updated it to what our current practices are. And anything that was antiquated, we had some building changes that had happened, some procedure components, so they updated it, and then we shared it with all staff. And so all staff spent the first 20 days during the morning meeting. So it was right after morning announcements, and would do each component. So for example, here you can see day 3 was bathroom etiquette. What are our expectations in the bathroom? This is campus-wide. Day 4 was hallway and walking and waiting in lines, or what are our campus expectations anywhere you are on campus for hallway and walking and waiting in line. I would also do this the first 20 days of the second semester, and I led that over the morning announcements because we had a lot of students that came in after the beginning of the year, and it was always, in my experience, a great time to kind of refocus and re-hone in without really taking up too much instructional time, is refocusing in on what are our expectations. And then most years I did a final 20 days. So our final 20 days on morning announcements, I also would finish out with the expectations and talk about that champions finish strong, and that we're going to stay true to what our expectations and have high character and continue to give full effort to the last day of school. So this first 20 days was really something that was teacher created and then student taught. And then with that too is that our campus policy was we could not write up students in the first 20 days for minor infractions until we had ensured that we had taught and modeled what those expectations were. After the first 20 days and we ensured we had taught, had given them opportunity to learn, then we could start doing that. So evidence around the campus that you could see that aligned with this is that one of our common mottos is that I would say NEU, and we had to teach students this, and then they would say eyes on you, because I found quickly as a campus principal that I would go into an assembly and need to get all students refocused, and there was not a system in place. And so that's something that we came up with. So we practiced it actually on the morning announcements, which I know sounds odd, and to some degree it was, but it worked. So then by first assembly, we were ready and we could do that. The next thing I would say was show me your plan. And so that meant that they needed to check their posture, look and listen, all things put away, no talking, no excuses. And then what was really neat is teachers used this same language in classrooms. When they needed to refocus students, they could use any you. They could also ask them to show me your plan in any classroom you're in, whether it's PE, music, a science lab, computer lab. It was a common language for us across the campus. Substitutes learned it and also used it. So really a system that aligned with what our vision and mission was. And then the side component of that, we taught students our expectations, but did we have a way to hold them accountable? And then were we consistent across the campus? So this really came in year 2 and beyond. But this was a system that it was teacher created, that we really had to start identifying what is a level 1, so what are minors and what are majors, because there was a lot of variance happening across the campus. For some teachers, running was a major, and for other teachers, it was a minor. And so we had to really align our language and our expectations. And so this aligned with our first 20 days. And so this was teacher created, and so we defined what are level 1s, level 2, and with that though, a level 1 repeated. If a student continues to run in the hallway after being redirected and explained and modeled and taught, well then it became a level 2, because that becomes it's a little bit more of a defiance component. So they could increase in what that is. So you see like a 3rd level 1 offense at the top, and then so forth. Repeated level 2s then can become a major. So then what did we do with that? Well, then it was really a very detailed process of what form do we use, and depending on even which component you're in. So if they're in the classroom, if you're in specials, if you're at recess, at lunch. So in a minor violation, this is how we handle it. In a major, this is what we do. So it was teacher choice and how we wanted to report it. My campus requested the triplicate, so we old school did it. It was paper with 2 copies. My teachers thought that was the easiest in getting information to parents. I've seen this done in different ways. You could Google form. There's other ways that you could do this. This is just how my staff chose and wanted to do it. And for our sake and for documenting, either way we could make either way happen. So this is just at the top portion of what our minor incident form looked like. So this was classroom handled. Teachers drove this component, and also the consequences for what those were. And then this was a major. So if it was referred to the office, this was what we used then to follow up with families on. So with that, we also did what we called golden tickets, and they were caught, we wanted to catch kids going the antelope way. So once we had taught the first 20 days, we really, we gave staff 3 golden tickets a week and asked them, so this was based around what our character education was on the 6 pillars. This could be anything though. And so what we would do is any staff that caught kids going the antelope way in any of one of these character pillars would give them a golden ticket. The student would bring the golden ticket to the office. They got a prize immediately. And then their ticket went in a box for a drawing at our assemblies. And we did 9-week assemblies as well as an end of year assembly. And so this was really focused on our character education, aligning with our vision and mission and going the antelope way, which focused around having high character and giving full effort. And so I really contemplating putting this component in there, but I felt like it went along with supporting and thinking through as a campus, a vision and mission, and our values, we encompass a lot of things in that. It's social, emotional, behavior, academic support, and really trying to grow the whole child with an aiming and a target of past school. So really beyond and into adulthood and for life. And so I included this. We refined our SIT referral process, which was really on the academic side, but it also supported behavior as well. And then built-in times within the calendar of when those would be. So teachers knew when those supports were coming. There were options to meet in the in-between, but really this was a very systematic process. It followed our data digs. So it was based on data, and then teachers had to provide evidence that they had provided response and parent communications that either through, if it were behavior, through the major or minor forms, that parents were also aware of the need, level of need, and then why a student would be brought to a SIT team. So one of the things that we did about year 3 was really started trying to grow in or start sprinkling in growth mindset and educating students and staff and really growing that culture and shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And so one of the things that we did in order to do that is we started giving Jungle Tiger Awards at our awards assemblies. It honestly became my absolute favorite award we gave. And so this, if you're not familiar with what Jungle Tiger would mean, you should look up Trevor Reagan on trainugly.com, and he has some phenomenal free resources, videos, posters. So that's really what we accessed, and we used my counselor provided in her guidance counseling sessions and our assemblies. We did some little snippets on what is growth mindset, but then really tried to build in some systems along the way and focusing on student progress. And so these awards were given completely based on data. I have seen these be teacher chosen. We chose to make it data driven. And so our top 5 progress students in reading and math received the Jungle Tiger Award at the awards assembly. And so this is just an example of trying to embed in our culture and maintain in front of us of really what our focus on and what we were aiming at. Oh, well, this was an example of a staff newsletter. And so in embedding and continuing to put in front of staff what our focus is. So this was a monthly newsletter that I did for staff, and just embed that, any things that were upcoming. I also tried to take pictures around the campus, so like this out and about. So any exemplars or exemplar practices that I saw along the way, and just trying to share across the campus. So same thing as principals, we always say, gosh, if we could go back in the classroom, how much better teachers we would be, because we've seen so much great teaching. So this was a space that I tried to do that. Or if I saw teachers that were struggling through things, for example, we had really been working on learning objectives and writing lesson objectives. And so anytime that I saw ones that really, in my opinion, hit the mark and were exemplars, that I would share that information within the SMORE newsletter. And once that this started happening and I would put which teachers had done that, that I also, this, in my opinion, started really creating some collaboration. And my intent in doing this is that we're asking students to have a growth mindset and be willing to learn and grow, that I thought that we should model this at a minimum as the teachers as well. And so that's one way that we did that. Another thing that I did was we had a staff remind, which really the way I used the staff remind was I tried to use it seldomly just because we get enough things to go through. Let's see if I can get this slide to advance. There we go. That we also use staff remind. And so what I would tell, I use staff remind, it might be like this time of the year that a jeans pass just because it was feeling like it was time for a jeans pass, or just whatever that would be for you guys that you could have to do that. So this is something in the growth mindset and expanding on and really trying to have a growth mindset. The next year we implemented what we called Observe Me. It really was a peer observation. So I created a Google form. We went through every classroom and thought, what would we want to replicate in this classroom? So as you can see from this list, it really spanned depth of planning to transitions, frequent small group purposeful talk, which for us is a fundamental 5. We did done a fundamental 5 book study and building some momentum around that, academic vocabulary, things that we knew that our teachers were wanting to grow in. We tried to really identify who the model teachers were in those components to help them, because the expectation was is that they do 2 peer observations. One had to be aligned with what their goal was, their professional goal. The second one was a free choice. So when they emailed with the teacher to coordinate when that would be. And so that teacher that was being observed always knew. And so when they were in there, we created a Google form. And in the Google form, you can see they really just had to identify who they were observing. The intent in this was not to evaluate, it was for personal growth. And so then if you see here what they did, why they chose it, and then what was so cool what I observed that was so cool I couldn't stand it, and what can I take back to my classroom to alter my instructional delivery. So I wanted to show you an example. This is just one snippet. So if you develop the form, this is what you can see from the Google form. So for example, up here is one observation. So it states who she chose and who she was, but then the reason that she chose this teacher is I'm looking for ideas for classroom management with younger grades. This was a teacher that taught content across multiple grade levels. And then what she observed that was so cool was she observed explicit modeling, constant positive feedback for positive behavior. And then what can I take back? Explicit modeling for younger students. Don't assume they know what you want. Correct misbehavior by rewarding students who were near the problem but following instructions. And so here's another example. So this is really focused on, to me, classroom management, and then here's one focused on instructional resources and delivery. Chose this teacher because I'd like to see grade level alignment, and then you can see here the depth of the things that she liked, and then what do I plan? I'd love to incorporate snapping with the reading, so really some immediate take backs of how that could alter her instruction, as well as giving her a go-to as battling through it and what we call jungle tigering through it and trying to grow in skills. I already showed you those components. So if I put on the lens of ESF, thinking about my campus and practices, what do we do well and what could we do better? Definitely some next steps for us would be that we had a vision, mission, and values, but I cannot say that our students had been included in the process of creating or refining it. So definitely at a place we could bring now a team of students in to do that and ensure that aligns and that they understand what that is. So that's an area of growth. The other component is we did not do climate surveys. So we surveyed staff, but not students and family. So that would be an absolute next step that I would share with leadership team. I know that our Title I ladies have some great resources for that we wouldn't have to create and develop it, but it's actually a resource I would definitely look into in order to use this year if I were still on this campus. So this is just kind of an example of layering on what could this look like and how would I use this and what the next steps in going forward are. And I'm sorry that that keeps going to, I guess there's a link embedded in there. So this sums up 3.1. 3.1, in my opinion, is a huge component of ESF. So it definitely took longer for this webinar series. There's so many components that go into positive school culture. But with that said, there is not a right way to do positive school culture. If we look at put the lens of ESF on, think of your practices, what's evident and what's not evident, or what would be evidence lacking. Well, that would tell us then where to start or where we could start. So again, I'm Leela Tarbert. Thanks for joining us. Next week will be 5 of 6. We only have 2 more left. Next week's focus will be effective and well-supported teachers. We hope to see you, and thanks for joining us. This is recorded, so if there's a component you'd like to see again, we will post it on a link in the SMORE. Or if you have questions on anything that I shared in here and you would like more detail, feel free to reach out to me by phone, work phone, cell phone, or email. Thanks again for joining.